What could a bunch of teenagers at a summer camp in Maine possibly have to do with peace in the Middle East? Not much if it weren't for who they are. Groups of Israeli kids and Arab kids come here each summer to try to do what their parents never could do: make friends with the enemy.
I think they go home very, very different than when they arrived. I think they now know the enemy. I think the enemy has a face. The enemy is now human.
Even though Yasser Arafat and Benjamin Netanyahu will be meeting in Washington next Thursday to try to find a way to bring peace to the Middle East, barely a week goes by in their part of the world without more killing, more bombs, more intransigence. Up to now, the future has been as bleak as the past for Israelis and Palestinians. Can they give peace a chance? That question was answered in a very small but not insignificant way a few weeks ago, right here in the United States. Up in the woods of Maine at Pleasant Lake, 168 Israelis and Arabs tried it out. They brought with them all their baggage: mistrust, hatred, anger, and fear.
Ready up!
It's a camp called Seeds of Peace, an attempt to circumvent the future. 14 and 15-year-olds who've exchanged for a few weeks the shadow of war for a tug of war. The shirt colors mean nothing. It is Arabs and Israelis versus Arabs and Israelis.
It doesn't matter if you're green or you're blue or you're Israeli or you're Palestinian. We're one team.
John Wallach, an editor for Hearst, who covered the Middle East and who saw only a continuing cycle of hatred and violence, started Seeds of Peace 6 years ago in the belief that a new generation can break the cycle.
Why here in this idyllic setting of Maine? Why not there where it's happening?
Well, you couldn't do it there. First of all, one side or the other would be dominant. You had to have a neutral, safe, supportive environment. The state of Maine is ideal for this. We're back to basics here. We're in the world that God created.
But well away from God's own troubled city, Jerusalem, in the so-called Holy Land, where these kids live with the possibility of all that is unholy every day of their lives. They come from all over the region, all those evening news datelines: Ramallah, Tel Aviv, the Gaza Strip, Jerusalem, where fear and security are part of everyone's daily catechism. To win a place at Seeds of Peace is tough. They've got to be smart, must speak fluent English, and must be approved by their governments. Money is raised in fundraisers in the United States and from corporate sponsors. They come from Israel and most of the Arab countries.
Welcome to the United States. I'm Mike.
But the focus is on those who live side by side, Israelis and Palestinians.
Some of them are from settlements. Some are orthodox in their thinking, if not in their religion. And they're tough. And that's the way we want it. The governments choose these kids. It's very, very important that this is not a left-wing peace organization. We're not here to simply, plant a tree and sing a song and call it peace.
But if they're choosing, one assumes, militant, ingrained, true believers, people unshakable in their beliefs.
Absolutely.
And you expect to shake them.
I think the process of humanizing the conflict shakes them. If you begin to know your enemy, if you begin to hear your enemy, if you begin to understand your enemy, it's inevitable that you will begin to feel some empathy.
The hope on day one is that doing such unthinkable things as sharing meals, if camp food can be so described,
one from Jordan, one from Egypt will be here tonight,
and living in close quarters will humanize the enemy. Though who is almost impossible for an outsider to figure out. The kids themselves have no such problem. The first hurdle is learning to overcome the fear of sleeping with the enemy.
My first day here, I saw that I'll sleep with Israeli girls in the same room. So really, I was frightened. I can't sleep the whole night. But after that, I know that we all human beings. I know that they are really, really friendly people.
I've never met guys from Israel before. I was always wondering, how do they think about us? How do they understand us? So now we're here like talking to each other every day, living with each other, and we're really trying to understand each other, even though that we're different.
I'd like to ask you what you now understand about them that you didn't understand before.
I understood that they are willing to listen to me.
Is that a big thing?
It is a very big thing. And because they listen to me, they're gonna get to respect me.
It's hard to believe that these idyllic moments should be hard to believe. But back home, this would be virtually unthinkable. You must travel 6,000 miles to trust someone who may live a few blocks another world away. But the playing fields of Maine are only part of it. The kids are forced to deal every day with topic A.
Killing people is terror, and that's it.
Coexistence sessions, they're called. Especially trained counselors lead them into those familiar minefields, the occupied territories, religion, terrorism, the whole awful weight of history.
But people were praying for God. They were just praying for God. Just tried to commit suicide just to show his feelings.
We are freedom fighters. We want our freedom.
You allow me to kill you to show you my feelings?
I think you should.
Okay, I'll kill everybody because I'm angry. Okay, I'll kill everybody.
Time out.
We came to make peace.
Time out. Bazem. We know that. Thank you.
What is remarkable to an outsider is that they really can put the polemics to rest when the sessions end.
Okay, we're still friends. Don't you worry about us. Okay?
They make the awesome discovery that enemies are not necessarily monsters.
We don't need to convince each other. The thing that we need is just to understand the other side. It's the most important thing.
All up! All up!
The job of keeping the peace falls to Tim Wilson, the camp director.
Is it hard for you to keep, I don't know what you'd call it, neutrality in all this?
No. Hey, being African American in the United States, there's a whole lot of places you got to be neutral. The reality of it.
He's a former football coach from inner city Pittsburgh who's seen his fair share of violence. He says these kids aren't much different from other kids who live their lives in dangerous places.
They come with some pretty heavy stuff they have to deal with. But once you take that away, they're just like our kids. I mean, they want to listen to their music. They want to chew bubble gum, and, you know, and to the extent of looking at the ladies, they do.
Any of the typical problems among teenage kids here, crossover romances, if I can use that word?
Well, I'm not going to say that some of these kids don't like each other. You know, they're 13 to 15-year-olds. You're going to have that. But everybody understands the rules that I have. One or two test those rules.
You're looking for peace, not love.
Well, yeah.
The rules. As much innocent mixing as you like, but no, repeat, no romance. In deference to Islam, no mixed swimming. The girls' beach is a distant, hazy no-no. Friendship, companionship, even hugging among friends and foes is encouraged. But just when you think it might be all new age, touchy-feely harmony, you are quickly brought back to reality.
Both sides suffered because both sides suffered and no side suffered more than the other.
Where's the security for the Palestinians?
I'm afraid because, you know, when I was 5 years old, I went for a second to pray next to put a note in the sacred wall. You know what happened? I got a rock almost on my head.
These are all stereotypes that plague the Middle East. This is what gives the Middle Easterns a bad name.
That's the problem. See? That's the problem.
And it's not just confined to the coexistence sessions. Sit down for a minute to chat to them, and you ascend the Tower of Babel.
I
can't go out at night
to
killing innocent
people. 1 second. If you,
I don't accept it.
Let her finish.
My family went through the Holocaust. And after the Holocaust, when we got to Israel, we were so proud that finally we have some place to live, some place that we can call home.
That's basically what you're saying.
But hold on, please. Please, no, stop. Let me ask you.
But I just want to say something, that when they came and lived there were Palestinians living there. It wasn't an empty land to come and live there. So what they did, they kicked out the Palestinians, which are refugees now. What about these refugees? And they're living as fine.
Jonathan.
Well, first of all,
Israelis, right?
it's not like people came to Israel and kicked the Palestinian people out. First of all, we had nowhere else to go. We need a country. We need But wait a second. Let me finish. I'm not saying it's right. And my idea is to coexist. But you know what happened in the past, that happened.
We both have very bitter pasts, you know, and if we're gonna stand all the time, you know, moaning and complaining about what we had, how bad we were, it's never gonna get better.
Does everyone agree with that sentiment?
Yes,
I don't.
You don't. Why not?
I mean, at some point we have to mention the past, because if it weren't for the past, all this wouldn't have been happening. I think we should stop comparing suffering, but I don't think we should ignore the past.
Do any of you ever get tired of talking about this?
Yes. It's like a big circle.
I don't get tired of speaking about this because I had 2 friends killed in a terrorist bombing, and I'm just here for them to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I know they want peace, and that's why I'm here.
Even the splendid isolation of Maine does not offer immunity from news, generally bad news from home.
2 hours ago, 2 Israeli settlers were killed at a settlement near Nablus called Itzar. You've got to reach out to each other today. I ask you now to think and have a moment of silence for the 2 people who were killed.
This morning, when Mr. Wallach announced that there'd been some killings of 2 Israelis, how did you feel about it?
I felt really sad. That made me really, you know, disappointed. I really wanted, you know, to go to the negotiations and like say, come on, people are dying because you cannot solve this little problem.
Gina, how did you feel when he announced that?
I felt really sad. I was standing next to Liron, and Liron started crying, and I really felt sad. So me and Liron had a good hug.
I felt
together.
sad because it really changed my mind about the way I feel, and I think anytime any Israeli or Palestinian is killed, I think that I will look at it differently. And
you feel that too?
Definitely. I will feel differently for every Palestinian who's killed. Instead of, you know, seeing them as just people who throw stones at my soldiers, I see them now as individuals.
What Seeds of Peace is about is beginning to think for yourself. And that's not easy.
I understand how that might take hold in a couple of wonderful weeks in Maine, where their minds are being exercised and their bodies are being exercised. But then they go back to the reality, to the home of those beliefs. And don't they simply revert back to who they were?
I think some of them do. I think the large majority of them do not. I think they go home very, very different than when they arrived. I think they now know the enemy. I think the enemy has a face. The enemy is now human.
I'll come visit you in Jordan. Of course, yeah, come to Jordan.
Who knows if the spirit of Maine will really last? But for one moment anyway, this summer, history did stand still.